for his important legislation combating sex trafficking. I'd like to commend Ms. Wilson for her resolution that aims to take on the tough issue of the abduction of these female students by Boko Haram, which is a terrorist organization. Anytime we have an opportunity to stand up against terror and stand up in support of children's rights, we should do it. But I really want to thank my friend and colleague, the Chairman Emeritus, Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, for her work in moving the Venezuela Human Rights and Democratic Protection Act forward, and for doing it swiftly, and for being such an important voice for the people of Venezuela. I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor of this legislation. This bill will empower the administration with tools to crack down on egregious human rights abuses taking place against those seeking basic freedoms in Venezuela. People of Venezuela have the democratic right to freedom of speech, the democratic right to freedom of assembly, the democratic right to due process, and the democratic right to a responsive government. Tragically, the Maduro regime has trampled over each of these rights in what was recently deemed a pattern of serious abuses. This government has continued its repressive policies. Journalists are censored, imprisoned. Opposition politicians are intimidated and arrested, and protesters are subjected to serious abuses, torture, and even death. And for what? Simply because the people of Venezuela are demanding greater security in a country with the 5th highest murder rate, where 2,500 people were murdered for the first 2 months of 2014? Or is it because people are suffering from serious food scarcity and lack of access to basic supplies, since Venezuela experienced an inflation rate of 56% in 2013? These are simple, basic demands from the citizens of a democratic state. The unlawful and unjust use of force cannot be tolerated. There is no justification for the abusive tactics used by the security forces against mostly nonviolent, unarmed protesters. It is especially alarming that demonstrators are also being targeted by pro-government civilian gangs, colectivos, that use aggressive crackdown tactics. And with the judiciary clearly in the pocket of President Maduro, these colectivos and the country's security forces have been free to repeatedly commit human rights abuses with impunity. This behavior exposes the true colors of the Maduro regime. It serves its own interests, ignoring the cries of its people, and it will use any means to silence dissent and to retain power. I strongly support the bill before us today that would impose sanctions on individuals that have contributed in any way to the violent crackdown. I thank the administration's strong stance on this issue, and I believe that this bill will provide more diplomatic tools for the administration to convince Maduro to reach a peaceful resolution with the protesters, with the Venezuelan people. The voices of the people must be heard, and their fundamental freedoms must be protected. We must make clear to President Maduro and his cronies that he's got to respect the democratic rights of all Venezuelans and protect them from the undue suppression of these rights. There are a lot of issues that we grapple with around the world that all fight for our attention. But human rights matter. They matter to us, and they matter to us wherever those rights are trampled anywhere in the world. This is not an issue that the Venezuelan people alone care about, that Venezuelan Americans alone care about. This is an issue that if we care about those democratic ideals that we like to talk about time and time again in this Congress, then we should all care about it. That's what this bill does. I commend my good friend. It is not that long ago that we first learned of the SOS Venezuela sign. The people of Venezuela have sent us an SOS signal, and today will be the first step in a serious way that this Congress will respond. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Salmon.